Russian athletes 11th-hour appeal denied by Court of Arbitration for Sport. PyeongChang, South Korea, just hours before the ceremonial start of the PyeongChang Games, the Court of Arbitration for Sport denied the 11th-hour appeals filed by 45 Russian athletes who were hoping for a last-minute invitation to the Olympics. The ruling was announced at a brief news conference Friday morning in PyeongChang, about 9 hours before athletes from Russia and around the world were scheduled to march in the opening ceremonies. Matthieu Reeb, the CAS Secretary General, delivered the news, reading from a prepared statement, but did not field any questions. The exact composition of the Russian contingent has been shrouded in uncertainty for months, and even as the fate of nearly 4 dozen Russian athletes was being considered by CAS, some competitions here had already begun, including figure skating, freestyle skiing and curling. Reeb said CAS found the Russian athletes failed to demonstrate in their appeals that the 2 International Olympic Committee panels charged with ruling on eligibility acted improperly. There was no finding that it was carried out in a discriminatory, arbitrary or unfair manner, he said. The CAS panel also concluded that there was no evidence that these 2 commissions improperly exercised their discretion. The ruling means 168 Russian athletes are expected to participate in these PyeongChang Olympics, but many of the country's top performers will not be competing. The 45 Russians who were denied entry include speed skater Viktor An, who won 6 gold medals in 2 previous Olympics, former NHL players Valery Nichushkin and Sergei Plotnikov, Alexander Treshchikov, the skeleton rider who won gold in Sochi, Alexander Legkov, an Olympic champion in cross-country skiing, Elena Nikitina, who won bronze in skeleton at the 2014 Games, and Tatiana Ivanova, a luger who took silver in Sochi. Nikitina and Ivanova were the only ones to attend Friday's hearing in person, Reeb said. Many of those athletes were initially stripped of their Olympic medals and barred from competition, but CAS had reinstated some of their Sochi results, giving them hope they might also be allowed to compete in PyeongChang. In the days leading into these games, athletes from other countries have been critical of the process and expressed concerns about the fairness of Olympic competition, so Friday's CAS decision was welcome news in many corners. Anita de France, a member of both the IOC and the U.S. Olympic Committee, said the decision was a victory for clean athletes and the IOC, whose authority had effectively been challenged. The IOC has been working extraordinarily hard to make sure that we protect the clean athletes, she said. We're not particularly happy with the thought of having athletes that we knew were not clean having the opportunity to compete. So we put together a case before CAS, and we're delighted with the outcome. Angela Ruggiero, an IOC member who serves on the organization's Athletes Commission, said Friday's ruling should give athletes in PyeongChang both peace of mind and confidence that these Olympics will be as clean as possible. The message that I think we're sending to athletes now is, the decision has been made. You should be incredibly confident that every athlete, including Olympic athletes of Russia, have had to jump over an enormously high hurdle to be here, said Ruggiero, who's also a USOC board member. Just focus on competition now at this point. The news was just the latest twist in a drama that stretches back to the last Winter Olympics, where investigators discovered the Russians were engaged in a state-run doping program. In December, the IOC Executive Board banned the Russian Federation from these Olympics but left the door open for individual Russian athletes to compete if they could demonstrate they were innocent of drug cheating. While the move was roundly celebrated by many in the international sports community, it quickly became apparent that Russia would still have a major presence at these games. A total of 389 Russian athletes were initially cleared by a panel, and 169 were later invited to participate in PyeongChang. They're competing here under the designation of an Olympic athlete from Russia. Russia's flag will not fly at the Olympics, and its anthem will not be played at any medal ceremonies. 32 athletes who were not invited by the IOC filed appeals with CAS. 15 other athletes and coaches who recently had their sanctions overturned by CAS also appealed. Just last week the court cast even more uncertainty on the unofficial Russian delegation when it upheld the appeals of 28 Russian athletes, lifting their sanctions and allowing them to seek last-minute entry to these games. CAS was considering their appeals all week, unable to deliver final decisions until the morning the Olympics ceremonially begin. The drawn-out decision and lingering uncertainty have drawn scrutiny to nearly every stakeholder involved in the process. At a news conference Thursday, officials from the World Anti-Doping Agency both defended the slow conclusion to the Russia case and expressed frustration with the process. WADA officials said the Russian Anti-Doping Agency has failed to meet agreed-upon standards that would allow officials from other countries to have faith in the Russian system again. Specifically, Russian officials have not publicly accepted the findings of Richard McLaren, a Canadian professor who outlined the state-sponsored doping system in an independent report in 2016, nor have they allowed WADA officials access to a Moscow laboratory where urine and blood samples of Russian athletes are stored. Every effort has been made to provide a proper playing field for the athletes, WADA President Craig Reedy said. The best thing we can do for clean sport is to make sure there is a really strong anti-doping agency in Russia. More than 2,900 athletes are competing in PyeongChang. Only 3 Olympic teams are bigger than the Olympic athletes from Russia Group: the United States, 241, Canada, 226, and Switzerland, 169. Despite all of the December buzz about Russia's ban, its 168-athlete PyeongChang representation is only slightly smaller than it had in some recent Winter Olympics. There were 232 Russian athletes in Sochi, where the host country typically receives more entries, 177 in Vancouver and 190 in Turin. Boris Verluga contributed